live.
We are live-ish. Yeah. Yeah. For the audience, if you
Welcome
don't know,
to WTKD Radio. Your source for today's hits and kicks and sometimes blocks.
Oh. That might be the funniest / offensive thing ever said on this show. I love it.
That's good. That's great. I'm so proud of myself, and I'm also
as you should be. That was exceptional. Well done.
That's funny.
Well done.
Yeah. So you want to? I'm Steve Watson, Someday Farm, somedayfarm.org in Connecticut, and by Zoom. So I'm everywhere.
Yeah. You've been on the show.
Yeah.
We had a great talk.
Yeah.
You hold the
Just
distinction
before we were doing video too, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You hold the distinction of the only episode where we had to add a video clip of you swinging on the swing to the show notes page.
Now I feel like I have to go after this and go find the swing set and record that again.
If you do, we'll add it in again.
A little bit of joy. Yeah. It's one of the more common recommendations I make to students,
Really?
Yeah. A lot of what my teaching looks like, it looks like a ministry, or it looks like therapy, whether that's physical therapy or psychological therapy. Not that I hang a shingle saying that's what I'm doing. I'm teaching
the
martial arts
blurry.
and philosophy.
If you focus on the personal growth stuff, there's a blur there.
And one of the more common things I'll do is say, don't drive by a swing set without stopping. Like that's just joy. It's meaningless. You're not doing it to get as high as you can or do it as long as you can, or you're just joy. Just swing for 3 minutes and then you're 3 minutes late to your meeting, and we kind of forget as adults, like, oh yeah, swings are kind of fun. I mean, it's just kind of, I might not want to build one in my yard and get on it every day, but just allow myself that sort of childlike view of the world.
It has no purpose other than joy. There is no, we're not function stacking. We're not,
right.
One could make the argument, well, a slide has some purpose. You could use it to transport things from high to low at a reduced rate of speed versus gravity, right? Like you could kind of back into almost anything else.
Right.
But what are you doing with a swing?
Yeah. You're just going there and going back, and going back.
It's counterproductive. It burns energy, right? Like
there's no net gain except for joy.
Yeah.
And we forget that, we forget that that's it, and it's free. Like it's just there's probably a park in your town or a school after school hours. You probably can't just pull up to a school these days and use the equipment.
Would be ill-advised.
You stop at the school on a Sunday perhaps or something, or maybe your neighbor has a swing, and just go get on the swing. And one of the other things I frequently recommend is take your shoes off, walk outside, like feel the earth, connect to that. It doesn't cost anything. Is it a martial arts lesson? I don't know. Is it a philosophy lesson? Yeah. Does it connect you to, the real teachings of humanity? Yeah. Like, is it the same as me showing you here? No, it's not, so it's not that exciting. And people will often kind of sort of pre-dismiss it when I start to say, just go to a swing. And they're like, oh, I really wanted some good advice. I'm like, have you gone on the swing? Like, try the swing and then ask me if you still need good advice. Like, it works, right?
I think the biggest misnomer of modern society is that these big problems we have require big solutions, when most of them are the absence of frequent small action.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How many people are chronically dehydrated? Drinking a glass of water is not a big deal.
Right.
But how many people aren't doing it?
Yeah. The missed accumulations of the minor
Yeah.
result in some more major effects, right? Um, One of the things that I learned, I have a specific story about kind of when I learned this,
Hmm.
but it was, and nobody at this moment knows where I'm going, but it was a lesson on conspiracy theories,
Hmm.
right? Which we're in a society which has made them relatively available
Sure.
and given them microphones. So we're all kind of closer to them and we can learn about them. We may even hear about them or buy into them or whatever.
Hmm.
But the idea is that if there is a small outcome, then I can expect and look for a small input and say, oh, well, that kind of makes sense, right? I snacked and I'm a little less hungry. That makes sense, right? I had a couple sips of water. I'm not parched, but I'm not fully hydrated. That
Sure.
makes sense. And if there's a large effect, right, like I tore my shoulder. Oh yeah, I went to the advanced judo class and I wasn't ready. Oh, okay, that kind of makes sense, right? But the difficulty is when there's a small input and a large output.
Hmm.
The brain says, well, the input doesn't match. So I need to develop a story that suggests a larger
Hmm.
input to help me make sense, like psychologically, maybe emotionally, certainly intellectually, make sense of the large output, right? So, for example, how can 6 or 7 razor blades on an airliner killed 2,000
Hmm.
people or whatever the number, I don't mean to misquote the numbers, but it's like, that doesn't, I mean, a couple of razor blades, like there's, do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so it's like, well, now I need to look for my sort of emotional, psychological security, centeredness, settledness. I need to believe that more happened than that. But the truth is, a small input can make a large output. Archimedes said, give me a lever and a firm place to stand, and I'll move the world, right?
Right.
And as a martial artist, we better be understanding leverage, right? It's the efficiency of input to seek a larger output, right?
Hmm.
This is why people will go to a DIMOC seminar like that. Are you kidding me? Like I do this and the guy fall, like count me in.
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing, right?
Well, I think your example of the obviously incredibly unfortunate circumstances of 9/11. You absolutely can look at it as, here's this fine point, this final step in the
Mm-hmm.
equation, but I don't know that we can necessarily reduce it to that. And I think the equation does balance, because how much
Sure.
effort, how much energy, how much anger,
Planning,
how
training, right?
yeah, there's
Sure.
so much in there.
Sure.
And if we take your example of grounding and walking outside,
Mm-hmm.
well, and I always preface this with the assuming that you believe in evolution, because not everyone does, but if you do
Sure.
believe in evolution, then there was a time not that long ago where simply being outside was far more dangerous than it is today, and our
Yeah.
body conditioned to that. So we could say, today, yeah, walking around my grass isn't a big deal,
Mm-hmm.
but 100,000 years ago, that was kind of a big deal, and the equation balanced a little bit differently.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think, as a science minded person, right? Which I think martial artists generally are. Like we're
Generally,
looking for causes and effects and we're
sure.
looking for hypotheses and we're looking to challenge them, whether that's in sparring or a question or improving curriculum or what have you. How do I make sense of these things?
Mhm.
Um, this challenge of looking to understand what are the other inputs that led to this output.
Mhm.
They might not be just the apparent ones or the sort of scariest part of the story, right? The razor blade, for example, that's a scary, like that's obvious that but like what else has gone into that? And I'd agree, everything has to balance. And one of the things that I teach is that you know when we fail to have, or at least have thus far failed to understand the reasons for another's actions or expressions or behaviors or whatever. Um, if I can sit back far enough, Yoda like, if you like, or um, more like Daniel-san's teacher, for
Mm.
example, right? Miyagi like, um, I I should recognize that whatever the actions, expressions, behaviors are of another person, they do make sense. There is causation for everything. And right now, you cut me off, and I'm just having my own reaction, maybe negative, maybe I'm swearing, maybe I'm tensing up, maybe thinking bad things about humanity or people in fiats or whatever it might be. But there is a reason for that. There's absolutely reason. In other words, it balances. I don't know the reason, and it maybe in this case, the guy cuts me off. I never will know the reason, right? But there's a reason. The person's rushing to the hospital because their wife is pregnant and they lost the last kid, or that they're a jerk and they actually did it on purpose, and because of how they were raised, and their kid failed out of school yesterday, and there's going to have to repeat it. Whatever, I don't know, but there is a reason. It balances out, and most often we don't get to learn these reasons.
Mm.
But the brain wants to balance out the effect, which is that I'm inconvenienced. I got scared for a moment when they cut into my lane or whatever. And so to recognize the urge to balance the story and the ability that we have to story make. And if I'm not conscious of it, it's very easy for me to make a story that serves my expression of inconvenience or rage or disappointment or frustration or jealousy or whatever it might be. And if I can recognize, well, I have this power to create a story. And so I get cut off and I just practice telling myself a story. Oh my
Mm.
God, I imagine that they've lost 3 kids and now they're running to the hospital to save their last kid of the same cancer that the other 3 had. And, good luck to him. I hope he makes it. Now, intellectually, I know the guy could just be a jerk and he was playing with his phone and didn't see me. And, you know, that's certainly possible. But in that moment, I might as well tell myself a story that balances it and allows me to have a more um, pleasant life. I mean, I'm the one bearing these effects, and,
Right,
and
right.
I play a
The person
role.
cutting you off does not care. They
Yeah,
do not
I
care how
I
you feel
play a
about being
I
cut
play
off.
a role in the effect that the world has on me.
Yeah.
And if I can kind of recognize that, it's almost like intercepting, because my body gets tense and I hold my breath and I snarl and I swear or whatever it might be. And what follows from that will be a story of, oh, everybody in this town sucks, or Jersey drivers are terrible, or
Well,
kids these days, yeah, right, kids these days, or whatever category I might want to put it in, or everybody's a bad. It was better when I was a kid. Whatever I say, those stories feel good,
mm,
but they don't serve me at all. They serve that negative expression. They don't serve me. So practicing, where can I tell a story? And I know it's a fiction. I'm just telling. I don't know what's true, but I am going to be consuming a story here in a moment. I might as well thread and knit and weave that story in a way that will be um, indeleterious to me, comfortable to me, perhaps healing to me, or perhaps just sort of optimistic about humanity to me. Right?
and of course,
It
far
makes my
easier
day
said
better.
than done.
Far
Yeah,
easier said than done.
yeah.
But
I
very, very rarely am I in a crisis situation. I'm a martial
mm,
artist. I don't get into fights. I don't have cool stories about this. And just last weekend, these 2 guys jumped. It doesn't really happen. But I constantly have instances of somebody cutting in front of me in line, or
mm,
somebody bumping me, or somebody being too loud next to me, or somebody not holding a door for somebody. I don't know, all these and these are all small opportunities for me to practice exactly what I believe in and what I teach. But the
mm,
stakes are very low, so they're easier to practice,
mm,
right? Just like you do an awful lot of time doing pumse or two-step sparring or working on techniques. And then occasionally you spar and it's a little bit closer to reality and the stakes are higher. You could get a black eye, you could jam your thumb, you could twist your knee, you could get knocked out. it's I would say injudicious of a teacher to say, here's the technique or the concept, the principle, okay, spar. No. Let me develop an understanding of it, a facility with it, uh, get some repetitions in all the different ways. And then at some point, okay, let's raise the stakes. I know you think you got it pretty well, pretty reliably. You got some confidence in it, but now let's spar these two black belts and see if you can actually make that come about. And they're not trying to beat you, they're trying to elicit that response and challenge it. So sometimes you don't get it, sometimes you do. You develop your confidence, but it's not without evidence, right? It's earned confidence, not unearned confidence. And so, I'm just constantly looking in life, where can I practice what it is I teach? I don't get very many chances to practice it at high stakes, but the amount of practices I get are innumerable, myriad practices, so that when the stakes are higher, I've kind of done this. I have some confidence. That confidence is based in evidence. There are practice, there are iterations. I could still mess it up, absolutely, right? But I'm going to meet that challenge in a way that, like, oh, this is my wheelhouse. This is my wheel kick. This is not foreign to me. This is familiar. This is comfortable. And to be able to meet challenges with some degree of comfort, or at least without a unbalanced degree of discomfort, is something that we grow into as martial artists. One of the great values of sparring is that I get comfortable with range, with contact, with getting my eyes watery, with having so much data coming at me that there's so many good things that come from just sort of being not uncomfortable and perhaps even comfortable in these high stress, high stakes, high amplitude situations. And on that rare occasion when a deer jumps out in front of your car, or your neighbor says, I got my gun out, you're on my lawn, or whatever kind of, hopefully I'm a little bit more prepared. And it's not just hopefully, it's evident in the fact of the process and progress in my life, or your life.
And I love the kind of the synchronicity that we have here. The idea of these very low stake, low impact, low risk actions that so many people have come to ignore, coupled with the perspective into martial arts. And if you want to be better at sparring, the only thing you can do that makes you better at sparring is sparring. Well, that's kind of ridiculous.
Right.
The best fighters in the world practice drills, and they practice on a bag and with pads and things like that. But for some of us, we need to practice things that are even more fundamental. How many students have you had over the years who struggled to move their feet in a way that was efficient and low risk? You get somebody who trips over their own feet because they're never without shoes, right? And so we ask them to walk around, to do these basic things shoeless, and there's just so much feedback coming from the ground that they're overwhelmed and they're moving funny, and they need to practice that.
Right.
That makes them better in an altercation if need be. Does it make them dramatically better? No. But if you had to pick better or worse, wouldn't you pick better?
Right.
I would. I think everyone would.
And when we think about a sparring practice, it's on a level and supportive and clean and clear floor. It's the lights are on. There are referees in case something gets out of hand. And there's a time limit, and when it's starting. none of those things occur in a real life self-defense,
True.
but those are designed to help us safely elevate the challenge,
Mm.
and that creates an environment in which we can work towards developing particular skills.
Mm.
And I think that far too often sparring is practiced in schools in a way in which it's uh, a release of energy, a a nod to the ego, like
Mm.
hey, you're good. Like this is your chance to be good. I mean, everybody knows you're the best one in the class. Like, go be good, and that's fun. And it's a chance to have fun. You're free. You're not doing 100 push-ups. You're not working on kata number 3 for the 10th time tonight. You're not showing the yellow belts how to do the outside block. Just again, you just go spar, right? And I think there's some value there, but I would say it's quite limited. I think the value is like, here's what we're working on.
Mm.
You need to get more opportunities to work your low blocks because here's this problem we've identified, or the next thing you need to learn, And so the person you're working with is going to give you more chances to do that, and a challenge, right? Or I'm working on you moving your feet well. That's the focus. There's other stuff to do. But too often what happens, I think, among the students and among the teaching staff, and perhaps whoever's, at the top of that teaching staff, it's really just this half of class maybe, or a third of class or whatever, in which like everybody spar, your egos get ripened, the energy, emotions go up, the fun goes up,
Mm.
and then you go home, right? But like, what did we work on? What did we learn? And there's generally this argument that something amorphously was learned. Like, well, I sparred. I'm better at sparring. I got some kicks in. I definitely won against 2 people. Like, I did good. It's like, yeah, but do you know what you were working on? Did your partner know what you were working on? Was there anybody helping you, or were you helping them? And I think there's so much more sparring can often than what I usually see. And so I would often deny people the chance to spar because they're pushing me to get permission to spar tonight,
Mm.
and I know that it's just about the fun and the freedom of that sparring, which is not nothing, and there's some value there. But it's like I want to know what we're working on. Give me a discrete skill or concept or principle or whatever
Mm.
that we're working on, and it could just be like you need to work your left kicks. Like, so just go do more left kicks tonight. That's your weakness, right? Okay, great, right? That's fine. Or do we ever spar in which the person that's sparring is holding a bag of groceries, right? Or holding their phone? Like, what do I do? Do I drop my phone? Do I try and put it away or something like that? Or am I sparring and I would do this with like a small bag, put a small bag on the ground, and that's your kid.
Yeah.
Now you got to spar. Like, I don't have the same freedom of movement. I can't move over here, and now you're between my kid and me. So I'm limited. I also can't trip on the kid, is just picturing like a 3 or 4 year old.
Yeah.
A little bit of sparring movement, the kid's like flung across the room, right? But I also can't leave the kid too far, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't do big wild movements, like simple restriction, right? Very, very simple idea. And that's just a bit closer to that kind of real world idea. But now we're all clear. That's what we're working on. We can still have some fun. We can still express our emotions. Like, it's still sparring,
Yeah.
right? But we know what we're all doing here.
I think the
Right?
best value of that open, non-situational sparring,
Mhm.
which I refer to as freeform movement,
Yeah.
is identifying what needs more work.
Yeah.
There's
Right.
always something. If you think of a professional sporting event, a basketball game,
Right.
if 2 teams are playing and one team loses, and it's by 8-10 points, enough to, okay, so there's a pattern here. What's the
Right.
pattern? Oh, okay, so we really broke down in defending this corner. Okay, so
And
who was
that
more or
they're
less
they're reviewing the tape, and they
absolutely.
have a staff doing it, and then there's a meeting, and they're like, here's the 4 video examples of how you fall for that fake or whatever. There's a drill we have for it. Go work on the drill. Now let's try and bring it out in tomorrow night's game, or yeah, for sure.
Right. It's that constant revision, iteration,
Yes.
testing process that really is baked into martial arts. But I think quite often we're not as conscious about it. And
Yeah.
if it is more conscious, then that cycle actually happens much faster.
Yeah. I
And this is
completely
part of
agree.
why, I mean,
Right.
you've been around when I've taught my stuff with
Hmm.
bringing things dramatically slower, and I know you do some stuff along
Yep.
those lines too. That when you put up parameters, when you give people guidelines, we're gonna forget about this part. We're gonna forget about
Mm.
speed, and you're not even gonna be allowed to kick right now. You're just gonna punch, and you're
Right.
gonna work with somebody else who's just gonna punch or just use their hands, and we're gonna go really slowly, and we're gonna see what happens there, right?
Right.
Because it gives human beings. I've found myself saying this often, and I'm
Right.
curious how you relate to this statement. Human beings understand the world based on the boundaries that we have to us.
Mm.
I am in my home. I am in this room. This is my
Right.
property. I am a this. You are a that, right?
Yeah.
We inherently put up all these boundaries. But when we ask two people to spar
Hmm.
at, we'll give them a rough speed approximation that they need to stay, and a rough
Right.
contact approximation, but go do whatever movements, we do. What do most people do? The same 3 to 5 techniques that they always do,
Right.
because we haven't given them boundaries that
Right.
shift their ability to practice or understand or anything else, so they can make progress on these fronts. It's time for a drill.
One of the things that I would do is when I'd have sparring, so you have two people sparring, and the rest of the class is sitting around watching.
Mm.
And I was thinking, as a teacher, they're resting, but are they learning? Probably not. They're probably just cheering and watching, or maybe bored, or putting on their foam dip gloves or something by whistlekick. Coupon code in the comments. Um, and I would say to them, here's one example: the two would spar maybe a couple rounds, and then I'd poll everybody. I'd say, okay, what did Roger do most often?
Mm.
Left jab or right roundhouse or whatever it was. Whatever got the most votes next round, he's not allowed to do that.
Mm.
You can't do the thing that you're most comfortable with or that's working. Or I would ask them for omissions, like, what did you not see from Sheila? I don't, whatever it is, she didn't do any hand movements. She mostly kicked. All right, you can't kick this round, or you have to do at least half, however we frame it. And so what I'm doing is I'm involving the other people. Like, I need you to learn to
Mm.
study people.
I like
That's
that.
how you become a better student, a better teacher, a better fighter, a better sparring partner. I'm like, I want you involved. You're not physically involved, but I want you mentally involved. And that was a really helpful way to develop the mind of those students. And it also doesn't let them off the hook. Like, when do I get to
Yeah,
karate again?
they're just waiting for their turn
Oh,
at
did you
that
call
point.
me? I don't want to see that in class. I want you engaged. And if you don't know what else to do, practice being a good teammate. Cheer them on. Get them going. Like, that's fine if that's helpful. And then I'd ask particular people to learn to coach. Like, all right, you've done your cheering. Now I need you to coach. Like, we got a minute between rounds. I need you to give them productive, whatever it is, and then send them out there. And then I need to hear what you're telling them, and you need to tell me why. That doesn't have to be the best answer or what I would have chosen, but you can't just say anything. It's got to be, here's what I noticed. Here's what we're about you or about them. Here's what we're going to exploit. Here's what I want you to watch out for. And it could just be a bit of rah rah, like you need a bit of an emotional boost because they kind of gave you a rough round. That's fine, but I need to hear why you're saying that, and then you're involving everybody. But
Mm.
again, that's just like I was saying with driving, or like, when am I not training? I guess when I'm sleeping. Like, I am, on a day when I don't have students, and my mind is just like, I wish somebody would show up right now because I need to get this out of my head. I got an hour's worth of stuff I need to say. Just somebody.
Yeah, the idea that observation
Hmm.
is not but unvaluable, non-valuable
Hmm.
in an educational process. It blows my mind how, let's say you take like someone who's been training for a few years, not a white belt, not a yellow belt, not somebody who's been around for 3 weeks and
Hmm.
they're tripping over their own feet, but somebody who's been around, they have a decent understanding of what's being taught, but there are a lot of gaps.
Hmm.
Watching someone more practiced doing the same things but much better
Hmm.
is so incredibly valuable. When there's
Hmm.
a noticeable gap between my skill and the skill I'm observing, it's motivating,
Hmm.
and it gives me a direction. Okay, so I do this form and they do this form, but they do this part like this.
Hmm.
Either I know what I need to do to go work on it and move in that direction, or maybe I don't, but there's a culture in this learning environment where I'm permitted to ask, how
Right.
do I get from here to there?
Right.
And
That
it's,
permission to ask is very important
yeah,
because what you find motivating, somebody else might find intimidating.
sure.
Right.
And,
So,
and, and often it's both.
yeah. So I would say that the thing itself is not motivating or intimidating.
Mm,
It's an opportunity to be motivated or intimidated, and that
well said.
how you relate to it is largely dependent on where you're coming from,
Mm,
what you're at. And you might be the guy who's generally motivated by a disparity in skill, like, which is great. Somebody else might generally be intimidated, and that person that's intimidated or might likely be intimidated, I want to recognize that as a teacher, and like, how do I offer more rungs on the ladder? How do I
mm,
offer you the opportunity to, as you say, ask a question or just share with me your concerns? Okay, well, there's a couple other ways that we can get there. Sorry, I made it seem like, it would be as if your first belt test is red belt. Like, whoa, wait, like, thank goodness it's yellow or stripe or whatever it is. Like that allows people to cross a larger gap.
mm.
Um, we don't. We don't want to do an Olympic long jump. We want to do, I don't know if it's a triple jump or a couple
Both are
waivers along
difficult.
the way. Yeah, both are difficult. Yeah.
Well, the number one thing that I see that changes this dynamic, so it's more likely that the delta between where I'm at and where I'm trying to go is seen as inspiring, is the conduct of the person at the top. Do
Mm,
they show what they do, and
mm,
are they willing to be vulnerable and imperfect in front of their students?
mm.
When they
Oh,
when
interesting.
they can convey that, you know what, we're all on a journey. I'm further down the path, but I'm not at the end.
Right.
I've found, and this does not happen often, but in the schools that I see it, it is so beautiful because they say, look, I do most of what you're doing better than you, but maybe the person at the top is older or has a
Right.
bum knee or something, and now
Sure.
jump spinning whatevers, or not, they can teach them, they remember
Yeah,
what
but they're
what they're
not.
doing,
They're
but
not
they're
in
not
your
doing them, and
repertoire.
if they do, yeah, they're not
Right.
great. And I enjoy that dynamic, and I think I've seen it out of martial arts more than in
Mm,
martial arts, where the teacher is really more of a coach. They're a guide. They're saying,
mm.
I'm going to help, I've got some context and some experience you don't, but I'm still working on this stuff. I'm still getting better. And it creates, rather than a very dramatic superior support subordinate relationship, it's more of a peer mentor.
Yeah. Yeah. During COVID, I decided to. I think I live streamed them, but I made them public one way or another. Was I said I got somebody's, like, I don't know if it was notes, but I think it was curriculum. It was a curriculum with like a slight description. I think it was
Mm,
Kempo, of some combinations or whatever they're called, techniques or something.
mhm.
And it's Kempo, so there's like, the guy punches and you do 17 things, kind of. But I don't have a familiarity with it, so I hit record, I set the thing up, and I work through what I thought it might mean,
Sure.
knowing I'm totally going to get stuff wrong, and that's not, I'm not even facing the right direction or whatever, because there's so much that's not written down that a Kempo person might know. but I was like, I want to let people see me just without even a coach there, try and learn something. And obviously 98% was messing stuff up, right? But I talked through my process. I'm just like, well,
Yeah.
I wonder, well, that wouldn't make, maybe it would be this. And I just did that for a series of those. And it's like, part of that is to invite people into, like,
Right.
I'm a student here, right?
That
Um,
I think what's even more valuable than whether or not you get it right is observing the thought process of someone who is quite
mhm,
practiced in a variety of things and applying that thought process to something new and seeing how your brain works through that material. That's fascinating to me,
mhm,
and is very similar to it's almost like the inverse of what most people call bunkai or oyo,
mhm,
right? Like the application. So we're kind of inverting it, and it's how do we get something out of words?
right. One of, one of the lessons that I endeavor to impart to my students, and I tend to wait till it comes up, and then I
Mm,
kind of launch into this thing, and it's a bigger thing that I won't share the whole thing with you here now.
sure.
Um, is that when they voice a concern over the disparity in skills between me and them, right, which might be frustration or a sense of impossibility, and it might be a sense of motivation, as you suggested. I'll say, look, here's something to keep in mind. My job is to teach. You're here as a student. I'm not going to try and show you something I'm still working on or having trouble with. That's not what you're paying me for. You're paying me to teach things that I have pretty well. I'm confident in, I'm comfortable in, I've developed a skill in. So, of all the things that I am working on or have been exposed to, there's some sliver of them that I'm competent in and proficient enough to pass on. So,
Mm,
those are the things I'm selecting. Of those things, I'm not selecting anything that you're already good at because you're here to learn something new.
mm,
So I'm further selecting from the things I'm very good at, the stuff that you're not good at. So the sense that you're likely to develop is that we're here, right?
yeah.
But the truth is, we're probably more wherever else it is. But over and over, you're going to continue to meet me only doing the things I'm confident and comfortable in and accomplished in, and the things that you're not. But I don't want you to draw from that the conclusion that I'm great at everything and you suck at everything. That's not what we're doing.
Sure.
We're just saying, of the things that you're not good at, which are the things that I'm good at, so I'm going to share those and work on them. Meanwhile, if you could see me in my house when you're not here, I'm messing up all kinds of things, and
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember the form I learned 25 years ago, and I used to have it, it's just gone. I'm looking at my note, it doesn't make sense, and I'm screwing this up, and I'm frustrated that I can't jump that high anymore and do that, and my shoulder hurts or what. I'm just like you,
Mm,
maybe with different things, but my job isn't to show you that part. I don't think it's my job to hide that. But in a class setting, I'm not going to say, well, folks, let's everybody work on the thing I can't figure out. Like, you're paying me as an expert, right? So
right.
I try and I graph that out on the whiteboard and I kind of show them, like, this is the
Mm,
disparity you're sensing, but it's not an accurate evaluation of where we actually both are. And if I went to your work tomorrow and you're an accountant, it would switch and you'd be showing me all the stuff you're absolutely certain of and stuff I definitely don't know. But there's definitely stuff in Excel you're still confused about, but you're not going to try and show me that. And I'm going to just be blown away. I can't even believe that you could do this and you press this button and Alt F3 and and that's the tax code in Montana. How would you know? Oh my God, that uh, you know, of course it's gonna be that way if I visited your work, but you're visiting my work, so you get a skewed sense of that. And so when that comes up, I try and address it with that kind of teaching,
mm,
and that's a helpful thing for me to remember. In this moment of the relationship with student and myself, it might feel this way to me, but that's not the truth of it. That's just in regards to this discrete thing we're working on. But
yeah.
it's different.
most people don't have that experience. Most people don't have a place in their life where everyone around them is dramatically less experienced at a thing,
Interesting.
right?
Yeah.
Like if you think about the accountant, it's going to be unlikely that someone with zero accounting experience ends up being their
Right.
direct report, right?
Right.
They're
They're
probably going to
working
go
with
to
other
some
accountants.
school.
They're working
Uh,
with accountants and CFOs and bookkeepers, and they have
yeah,
some things. Yeah, yeah. But I guess that's really just a story of being a teacher. Like a
yeah,
teacher, a great amount of the exposure is to those who do know less on these topics,
right.
and that's why you're at the front of the class to do it.
And
You
outside
know.
of the martial arts, it's usually so stratified. There are very few places where a single instructor is teaching someone on their first day and their 20th year in the same environment. We have that
Right.
in martial arts quite
Yeah.
commonly.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, three doors down is an old one room schoolhouse that's been
Mm.
converted into a home. And I think about just, what this space was like back then. What was it like to be the school teacher working with 5 year olds and what,
And
17,
16-year
19,
olds.
20 year
Yeah.
olds in the
Yeah.
same
In the
room,
same
and
room. In the same room.
how much were they mimicking what we do, which is okay. um, you're 12, they're 5, I need you to work with them on their math. I'm going to go over here and work with the 16-year-old on their whatever. And it's a collective educational environment, much the way
Right.
many martial arts schools operate.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think that's interesting to compare it to the one room schoolhouse.
I bet
Yeah.
somebody out there knows the history on these more than
Yeah.
I do, and can chime
Yeah, but
in.
that is what it's like. I mean, a dojo generally is a one room schoolhouse.
Yeah.
There's a big room and maybe an office or a changing room or something. But I haven't been in too many dojos where there's 3 or 4 rooms.
Right.
That's been my dream forever. Just have a room that's fully padded, a room with a boxing ring, a room with a
Mm.
like just that would be amazing, right?
There are a
Uh,
few of them out there. They're pretty cool. I've
yeah,
had the
it's
chance to
pretty
visit.
pretty extraordinary. But generally, yeah, it is like a one room schoolhouse, and you have people different ages, different skill levels, different ranks, if you like, working together. One of the things I just absolutely, I mean, I just so enjoy is the challenge of having a few people together with vastly varied skill sets,
Mm.
and I try and impart a lesson that's appropriate for everybody, one lesson for
Right.
everybody.
I'd like to ask about that. How do you determine what that lesson is?
To me, generally, what I do is I determine a category.
Mm.
Like, here's a lesson on ranging, or here's a lesson on blocking or breathing or whatever it might be. And I'll try and think of something that the most advanced person hasn't done yet.
Hmm.
So it's new to them. But then it, look at it in terms of a principle or concept,
Mm.
so that I can convey it to the, let's say, youngest or newest, least veteran person. And then the methods that the different levels might practice it might be
Mm.
different. Like the black belt might be doing it in terms of a spinning kick, and the other person's doing it in terms of getting their hands up or something like that. But they're all working on the same lesson, but the how of the application varies by skill.
Mm.
And for me, the challenge is I need to do it like that. I don't want them sitting around while I think it up and figure. I just want to like, ah, we're going to work on something with using the elbows, to hold somebody close.
Yeah.
Okay, but in this person, I'm going to say, well, we're going to do it based on technique number 7, where we kind of have that set up. But now I'm going to show you this variation. The other person can't start there, but I work with them on something else. To me, I so enjoy that challenge, and now I'm letting everybody have the same lesson and not have to teach each other, which often is what I'm doing.
Hmm.
But they're kind of getting it at their grade level, if you like, And then I'm keeping plate spinning. I'm going around and say, oh, you already got that. Let me show you the next piece. Oh, that's not quite what I meant. Let's start over. That challenge is so great, you know.
It's exciting. It's
Yeah,
exciting to be able to help that many people move
yeah,
forward in that many different ways, because you've got to be really good.
right.
You've got to remember, okay, what did I have this person doing?
Yeah.
And of course, it gets harder and harder the more people you have in class.
One of my most favorite things that happens to me, it probably happens once a year, maybe every 2 years, it is this thing where I've completely messed up. I have screwed it up. I've messed it up. It's my fault. And so most of my students are private lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Probably 80% of what I do is private lessons. And probably 60 to 70% of my students are teachers. So that's mostly kind of what my census looks like. And, you know, every year, every 18 months, something like that, what'll happen is I'll get my tea warmed up, I'll head on over. There a few minutes before, probably, and my student pulls in. I'm like, all right, good. We got an hour ahead of us. You know, we were doing this last week. I got to ask him about the homework I gave him. And then another car pulls in. I'm like, huh. And like, I've scheduled two people at the same time. Like, I have messed it up. And, you know, maybe they're vacations or saying, I messed it up, right? So they're both here. So immediately I just apologized to them both. And I said, it's on me. I'm not going to charge anybody for today. I'd like to invite you both to stay, because I can't really say who owns the spot because there was a mess up somewhere, you know. And in every case, they've both stayed, right? They both stayed. But what's fun is that in that moment, I'm I'm in error. I'm
Mm-hmm.
embarrassed, I guess, right? And I'm at fault, and I'm not getting paid now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I figured the least I can do is just, you know, let's not worry about the money. We'll fix it next time. Again, I'm sorry. But what's really fun is that this person is an 81-year-old grandmother who's here to do Aikido, and the other person is a 14-year-old kid who's here to do meditation.
Mm-hmm.
That quickly, I got to figure out, what can I teach them both that meets what they're looking for. It might not exactly be Aikido, but it like, what can I do? And to me, it's so exciting. It's like, what would be a cool thing that it meets them both where they are, but gives them something new. And it's so much fun. So it's I have so much fun that I wonder if subconsciously I cross schedule so I get to do
And I would guess that in those cases, because
it.
you're working so hard to make that correction, to own the error,
Yeah.
and to find a way to convey value to both people, but because it's not what they expected, it's not what they've likely been doing, it's different, they probably leave and they're most of the time thankful and appreciative and complimentary.
Yeah.
Wow, this was great.
Yeah, something a little different. Yeah, to their credit, nobody's ever said, you know what, I'll come back next week, and
Mm.
I'm a little annoyed. Everybody's just been like, I'm in. Like, oh, nice to meet you. Oh, you're Barbara. It's so great to meet you. Let's try. You know,
Yeah.
so much, and that starts with warm ups. Like, I got to warm them up, but this person does different warm up. You know, like, all right, let's warm up this way, and I show. It's so much fun for me.
Mm.
Um, you know, to do that, and it doesn't happen very often. um but uh again, that's like, I get to practice, like, you know, do I really understand these arts? And if I do, I should
Mm.
be able to see similarities or Venn diagrams of what's going on, and keep it accessible to both. And one could be doing martial arts for 40 years and the other for, you know, 3 months. Or what can I do them that's new for both of them and appropriate to both? That's
Does it have to
but
be
it's
new, or
kind of
does it
like what
have
I
to
do
be?
at a workshop. I don't know,
Sure.
there's 50, I don't know who any of them are really, maybe two of them. I got to offer something
Mm.
that's gonna leave everybody, you know, feeling like they chose the right workshop, you know. I talked over you. Sorry.
It's okay. When you have those situations, you said, "I've got to find something that's new for the 40-year practitioner." Does it have to be new, or does it have to be interesting?
Well, it has to be appropriate and valuable.
Sure.
That's really the
Okay.
model. I like it if it's new.
Yeah.
That so to me that's my additional challenge. I want it to be new,
Got it.
which means I need to remember everything that everybody's learned and been exposed to, so I know it's new. So it's like an additional challenge for me. No, it doesn't have to be new, um, but I like to feel like you know the student that comes to me will get something new in every class.
Mm,
If they want to cover something again, that's what they practice for.
right.
They're here with me to learn. It's a school. It's not a practice hall. It's a
Right.
school. So,
Right.
you
That's
know,
a great point.
if you want to do that again, work out with your training buddies, go home. You have a whole week to practice. That's fine. And of course, over time, they do repeat things in the school. It's not like we just do the form once, but I want to, push myself and push them to experience new.
Mm,
Um, and revisit those things on their own. One of the things that I do is my private lessons are hour long for the most part, um, and so you might be scheduled from 10 to 11 and somebody else is 11 to 12, but I generally say that if you're 11 to 12 you can come in at 10:55
mm,
and don't jump in and be high energy and
right.
interrupting and saying hi, but just come in quietly and sit. And that's not a strong it's not a great um trespass on the person who's paid for their time. It's a few minutes, but it's fantastic in terms of knitting relationships. People get to meet each other and get to know, and the other person will quietly be there and like, oh, I've never seen Aikido get taught, or they might say, I've learned this before, but now I can just watch it be taught, or notice that it's being taught differently to that different person than it was to me. And often the other person will invite them. Oh, why don't you do it with me? You're already here. Come on in. And to see those relationships get knit, I think is like so great. I mean, just one of the greatest things in martial arts for me is to see these relationships among students form and develop and bond and
Mm,
cross connect. And then you hear a story of, oh yeah, I heard that before, and that's why I called her because her dad is a plumber, and then they came and it's so great. I mean, it's not just sidekicks and high blocks. Like
right.
we develop a familiarity with and a trust in the people because they're known to you and in this school and following the, let's say, the ethics of the school and stuff. So yeah, why wouldn't I have you paint my house, like,
Sure.
and support those sort of things. Are when I find out, like, oh, you guys have been practicing together, what was it,
Mm,
Thursday mornings? Oh, that's so cool. Like that's so great because you're both in the same town, so you meet at lunch and do your forms, or like, oh, that is so great because martial arts shouldn't
mm,
primarily be happening in a dojo.
right.
It should be happening
Wholeheartedly
when
agree.
you're awake. In the dojo is where we meet the teacher, we meet the principals, we meet the lessons, but that's not where we get to know them, right? The story of a married couple starts with where they met, and it might be a pretty cool story, but most of the relationship was like them at home,
Yeah.
like all those things. And where we meet the teacher, where we meet the principals, where we meet the art might be in the dojo, but it had better be a small part of the whole story.
Mm,
Right? Like whatever I'm reading, whatever I'm listening to, whatever I'm observing, I'm running it through martial arts in my head. And that doesn't mean kicking and punching, but just all of the lessons. I'm just like, ah, I'm starting to see that, or I don't see that yet, but it's got to be there. Let me keep paying attention, and
mm.
those become my lessons too.
I think we're at a good point here to wind down. I'm not sure if it's coming through, but it sounds like someone's mowing my lawn, and I don't know who that would be. So I kind of need to go figure that out. And I'm noticing the time, and it works out kind of well.
I hope
Um,
that they're mowing it with two kata
I,
and a
I
low
I have
stance.
no idea what's
That
going
would
on.
be
I've got curtains pulled because this is a very bright window.
yeah.
And without going into detail, um, it could be one of several people, and I'm going to be very unhappy with all of them.
Well, definitely keep the video rolling. We need to know the viewers demand.
we may when we air this episode, we might have to post an update in the
Yes,
comments
yeah,
about
an update.
what happened
To
and
the lawn? Yeah,
who was mowing the lawn and why they were wrong.
that's fantastic.
But I thank you for coming on and being here, and
a real joy.
Always great to talk to you.
Yeah,
We'll do it again soon.
Thank you. I'll see you at free training.